Hello. Thanks for joining me tonight. I'm so excited tonight. And I thank you for your time. I thank you for tuning in for my first Facebook live stream and YouTube, by the way. So I know there's a lot of choices out there. There's a lot of places you could tune in. So I appreciate you checking this out. I've got some exciting news, and I'm so terribly excited to share it with you. So that's why I created this event, so I could do this very thing. And so why am I here? Why are you here? If you don't know by now, I have a new CD titled Nevada Sun, and I'm so terribly excited about it. And it comes out in about 3 hours at midnight, and on iTunes and Amazon and everywhere. And so I thought what might be fun is before the CD comes out, that I actually share it with my friends and premiere the CD as well as some video clips. And I'm also going to make an offer for you guys who stick in through the whole broadcast. I'm actually going to give you a hidden link where you can buy the CD with a coupon code for $4.99. And that also includes a digital booklet as well. So for those that tune in, I appreciate that. Before I get started, I just have to acknowledge a couple people because it's really important to me to do this. I want to thank Regine Trias. She took all the photography. I don't know how well you could see that video roll that was at the start of this presentation. But she did all the album artwork, and if you get the digital booklet, she took all the pictures. And she's an incredible photographer, and she was one of the first people that I met when I moved here, her and her husband. And we actually went hiking in Nevada. Cool chick, did an amazing work on the photography. So a big thanks to her for that, because she really captured the spirit of the essence of what I was going for. And also a big thank you to Thomas Heflin, who did the album artwork. Thomas is an incredible trumpeter, composer, producer, educator, and he's got a great eye for graphic arts. And I just love working with Thomas. And I want to say thanks to him. And then lastly, I want to say thanks to Rich Breen, who mastered my CD. And a huge thanks to Jimmy Haslip, the great Jimmy Haslip, who introduced me to Rich Breen, who's a Grammy Award-winning mixing engineer and mastering engineer. And he really helped smooth out this process and kind of made the final album what it is. So that's why we're here. I'm excited. We'll be here for about 30 minutes to an hour. And if you happen to see this on the rebroadcast, then great. Thanks again for your time for doing this. So to the point of all this, this album took me 2 years to make. And I'm going to, again, try not to do a lot of talking because I just want to let the music talk for itself. But I do kind of have to preface some of this, and I will kind of share some stories and insights along the way as well. This 2-year journey was pretty intense. So everything you hear on the bass is me. Everything you hear musically, I either recorded or performed or programmed. So, and I also mixed the album. So that's why it took 2 years. So at any rate, what I would like to do is I'm going to play the title cut called Nevada Sun, and I'm going to play just like a minute or 2 minutes of it, and then I'm going to talk about it. So here is it's hard to do this from an angle. I'm normally sitting down. So here's the title cut, Nevada Sun, world premiere right here. Here we go. So there's about 2 minutes of the title track, Nevada Sun. So what I would like to do is I'm going to play my whole CD like this and just kind of talk about some of the songs, some of the inspiration behind it, and some of the things that kind of transpired in this process. Because in this 2-year journey, I spent a lot of time right here creating this and living in my own head with this. So it's just good to be able to share my music with you. And so once again, thanks for tuning into this. Nevada Sun here actually was the last song I recorded. And there's really, I don't know what to say about it, except I was wanting to kind of go for a slap kind of upbeat song. And so as the song progresses, it has energy, I would say. And obviously for the opening song of this, you kind of want that. So I hope I captured that. I don't know anyway, but I don't know what else to say about that, except I would say that I knew 2 years ago when I was starting this journey that the album would be called Nevada Sun. I had that title in my head, and so all these songs are kind of encapsulated in that theme. Now, why is that? Does that mean anything? Well, just for people who may not know, I lived in Atlanta for 20 years, and about 2 years ago, my wife and I decided to move to Nevada. Excuse me. I'm still not used to that. And so people thought I was crazy. I had work, I had sessions, and I was doing fine in Atlanta. I've got a lot of great friends there. It's dear to my heart. But it was just time for a life change. And I wanted to shake things up a bit. And people just thought I was out of my mind because I was giving up on work. So we moved out here, and I knew one person, and that's the great bassist, Derek Jones. And Derek's a dear friend, and I love Derek. That's the only person I knew here. So it was starting from ground zero. So this whole journey of Nevada Sun was really a process. You know, it's like all these little mini books of my life of the last 2 years. So that's just kind of the essence of this. And you'll see some of the song titles kind of reflect my personal journey to this new, what I call Mars out here. I live in the desert, and I really dig it. It's a lot of fun. All right, on with the music. Thanks for your patience. I get in my rabbit holes, you know. The next tune is called Movement of Light. And I've got a really powerful story about this, but I shot a music video for this. And so what I'm going to do now is not play the song. I'm going to show you the entire music video for Movement of Light. And then I will briefly talk about it. Thank you. All right, that was Movement of Light, and of all the 11 songs on this album, that one was the first song I recorded actually, and the Movement of Light. Obviously, I'm wearing different colored shirts, and I wanted the theme of that to kind of be colorful, you know, and the whole concept of that. But where this really came from, I have to tell this story because this is kind of the inspiration behind this. When I first moved to town, I met this cat named John Graff. God bless him. John Graff is the curator at Caesar's Art Gallery. And I went to the art gallery and there was Miles Davis and Jimi Hendrix paintings. And I walked by and I was like, dude, I got to go in this store. So I walked in and John introduced himself and I introduced myself and I told him I had just moved here. And he says, man, he put his arm around me and couldn't have been nicer and showed me around the studio. And we got to talking. And we had almost discussed me actually playing in the art gallery at some point. So at any rate, we became friends and he texted me from time to time. And so he would do these shows and he had Steve Smith from Journey and he had other artists there, but he texted me and I couldn't make that one, unfortunately. But he texted me, said, hey man, Carl Palmer from Emerson, Lake and Palmer is doing an art showing and I would like you to come down. And I'm like, totally. So I go to this art show and it's me and about 20 people and Carl Palmer, the great drummer from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And he's got this amazing art gallery. And of course, he's talking about his works and he's selling his artwork. But his whole theme, it's hard to explain. You just have to Google it. But his whole theme is called Rhythm of Life. And it's all based on colors and the drumsticks and the way they use flash photography. It's really just outstanding work. But this is the crux of the story is when I went there to this event, I was truly inspired by Carl. But when I first showed up there, I said, hey, John, thanks so much for inviting me. How are you doing? And John said, not well. And I said, excuse me? And he says, I'm a Walking Dead man. And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, well, since I last talked to you, I've been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and it's terminal. And I have a year to live. I'm going to do chemo and maybe I'll live too. So that shattered me, and I didn't even know what to say. What do you say? So it was a real heavy night, that news, and then being in a room with Carl Palmer. So as I was driving home, I started thinking about all that auras and people and death and life, and so the movement of light, how we're all just kind of moving through this universe. You know, we all have a spirit, we have a soul, we're all doing our thing. So that's the essence of that. And that's the spirit and the heart behind Movement of Light, that song you just heard. Cool, moving on. So the next song is probably, I have to say my favorite. Let me just play it, and then I will talk about it. A little more. A little more of this. All right, so there's a little bit to this whole thing right here. This is called Iraqi Peace Song. And I was this is a traditional Iraqi folk song that I rearranged. It's public domain. It's the only public domain song on the album. And I have never really heard it that much, but I've actually never heard it at all. I don't know what I'm saying. But I was first introduced to it because I was playing a concert in Atlanta with the Atlanta Women's Chorus and the Gay Men's Chorus of Atlanta. And this was one of the songs that they chose. And so the arrangement we were playing was a choral version. But I remember that night when we were rehearsing it for the first time, I was just like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. It was really knocked out by just the feel of the Middle Eastern kind of vibe, and just just generally the key G minor. I like G minor. But at any rate, so I was like, man, I would really like to do something with this song. So there you have it. But this one, I just have to preface because it's kind of an interesting in terms of songwriting, how this kind of evolved. That last section there that you heard where it kind of broke down, that's actually where the song originally started. But I got to that front part there, that very beginning. But the thing is that actually in the original arrangement didn't come in until the very end of the song. So at the very end of the song, that whole thing you just heard happens. So as I was mixing it, I was like, man, it sure would be nice, because that's so powerful, that whole vibe right there. And I really like how that turned out. It was like, man, it sure would be nice to be able to hear that before 5 minutes into the song. So I stewed over, thought about rearranging it, thought about all these crazy things. And then finally I said, why don't I just copy and paste it to the beginning? So brilliant idea, right? No. So that's what I did. I copied it and I pasted it to the front of the song. But what I did is I actually deleted and muted some of the solo aspects of it and the fretless parts, and saved those for the latter part of the song. But getting back to my original point of Nevada Sun, the desert theme and all that, I felt like this was an appropriate song to kind of bundle in that title and that kind of feeling of just isolationism, you know, being 90% desert and just, you know, as far as the eye can see. And it kind of has that feel to it. So, but I'm really, really happy with Iraqi Peace song. That's definitely one of the more highlights for me personally on the album. So the next tune is a cover song. And the cover song is by, and please forgive me if I pronounce his name wrong, but it's Röyksopp. He had a song on the Geico commercial called Remind Me. And that's what I chose to cover, is Remind Me. I always saw that Geico commercial and I always kind of liked that little theme, you know? So I was like, wow, it would be cool to do this, but I'm going to play it. I'm going to shut up. Sorry. I get I get excited about this. Can you tell? Okay, so here is Remind Me. You might recognize this. The caveman walking down in the Geico commercial where he looks at the this bass line here. Okay, so later as the song progresses, it gets a lot more EDM, and there's a lot of that Skrillex kind of stuff that comes in, which I really like. That comes in later. But part of the reason I was so fascinated with this song is Röyksopp, and again, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing his name right. He's a great artist. That bass line that you heard right there that I was referencing, he did that on the keyboard. And when I first heard that, it's later in the song, I was like, God, that's just sick, man. So I got to figure that out. So it took me a minute to transcribe it. But when I did, I was like, maybe I should try to do something with this. But the last thing I'll say about this tune is if you listen to this drum loop at the beginning, of course you're hearing the bass too, but it's like up and then it drags right there. Up, drag. So, and I'm pointing that out because to me, that's what makes the loop feel so killer. And that's why I liked it. I was like, when I heard that, I was like, wow, it's spacious, it's repetitive. Let me see if I can merge the two. But when I actually started to record the bass line with that, it was like, uh-oh, speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. It was like, man, this is, so it took me a minute to actually get that fretless bass line down. But once I kind of got the feel of how that groove was kind of shifting a little bit, so to speak, it certainly wasn't on the grid. And I don't like music to be on the grid personally anyway, but it wasn't. So it made it kind of challenging to cut the basics of that. I don't know. There you have it. There's Remind Me. And by the way, mechanical licenses were applied for and streaming licenses. So Röyksopp, for some reason, if you're watching this, you're covered. I'm paying for this. Okay, so the next song is by this incredible African artist. This is a cover song. This is my arrangement. Her name, and again, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. I love her music. It's Dobet Nahare, Gnarho, I believe. Dobet Nahare, and this is her song called Isa, and this is my arrangement of it, and then I'll kind of talk about it. Then it gets into the second verse. Oh man, this is such a trip. Doing this, I just gotta say, you watch this, it's such as crazy for me. That original song that Dobet recorded was basically a stripped down version of acoustic guitar, vocals, and she's from Africa. I'm sorry, I don't know the country right off the top of my head, but you just have to hear her version. It's really incredible. So I was like, well, what can I do with this? Because I just really liked it for a lot of different reasons. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to change it up beat. I'm going to change some things. So a couple things to note: that kick drum that was driving, because Nevada sun again, and I'm actually living in Henderson, Nevada, which is outside of Las Vegas. Vegas is ruled by DJs and EDM. I mean, and so I wanted to kind of capture the culture here a little bit and that spirit. So I thought this would be a good song to kind of have that 120 beat, just the kick going, and then build the song around it. And so by doing that, the song I think is originally in 6/8, but by doing the kick, it obviously feels like it's in 4/4. So you have like a little bit of a rhythmic timing thing going on there between the two different time signatures, which just kind of makes it feel maybe a touch African, because I didn't want to lose that quality. Obviously, I'm not African, but I wanted to capture that spirit. And lastly, I will say, to try to really capture that fretless melody that I played, I spent about a week or more, 15 hours a day, listening to Dobet Nohora, and I transcribed her line and was trying to get her phrasing and her vibrato and the little nuances, because it's one thing to play notes, but to capture the spirit and essence of something is really hard. You have to, as my friend Donald Brown used to say years ago, is you have to get in someone's head. You have to get there. And so I did for a week. And I'm not saying I captured it. I'm just saying that's just to even get to a place where I thought I could even attempt to record this and do honor to her version. I felt like I had to try to capture some of her spirit. So hopefully I did that. But that's the end result. That's where I landed the plane. And lastly, going back to the Iraqi peace song, I did the same thing there. I got deep in the woodshed for weeks on that before I even thought about recording, because trying to play Middle Eastern and make the fretless bass there was to try to make it sound more sitar-like, and to do nuances and things that normally I would just, as a guy born in Knoxville, Tennessee, I would not have. That was not in my culture, and so I took it. It was deep training for me, so it was a growth thing, which is great, and I want to keep studying it, But that's where I landed the planes on those. That brings me to Fearless, and I have a video premiere I would like to show you for my song Fearless. All right. Well, there you have Fearless. The title of that song is called Fearless. A couple of things about that. That's kind of just, I think I just want to point out. I think of all 11 songs, that might be my least favorite song on the album. Can I admit that? I had fun doing it and everything, but the song itself, let me rephrase that. The song is A minor, C, G major, D major, sometimes D sus, D7, over and over and over, right? So I was like, well, what can I do with that in the reggae feel? So that was the challenge, was to take simple chord progression and how could you make it interesting? I don't know if I did that or not. I will say this was the next to last song that I did. And so by this point, when I was in this song, I was super fried and super burned out on this process because this is really personal to me. I lived with this right here for 2 years, creating all this. And I actually, there's another room in my studio you're not seeing, which is the live room, which I would run a feed out there and mic the cabinets. And that's where most of my basses are, and music gear is out there. So I'm running back and forth and, just the whole process. And just so you know, and I just really want to say this real quick because I've noticed a couple of you have posted this. I'm not playing live tonight. That's not the goal here or the plan. I hope to do that in the future. But right now, I just really want to share what I've been working on. So thanks again for tuning in, and we're going to keep it rolling. But lastly, on the title for Fearless, it ties into Nevada Sun because when I moved 2,000 miles away and came to a place I knew nobody, I had to have a sense of fearlessness because I was scared starting all over at my age in a brand new town. It's terrifying. So I just want to encourage anybody, whether you're an artist or you do anything in life, whatever it is you do, to have that sense of fearlessness. Because at the end of the day, I do know this. There's probably some of you right now as I'm doing this that's making fun of me. There's probably some of you that hate this music. But you know what? That's okay. I've come to accept, as my old friend Colonel Bruce Hampton once said, there's 31 flavors of ice cream for a reason. And as I've gotten older, I've really come to that conclusion that, you know, you do what you do, and if people appreciate it, cool. And if they don't, you know what? It's okay. But you have to be fearless and not be afraid to be who you are. And I really got to admit this publicly and say this. I just feel like at my age now, middleman here, I feel like I'm just now starting to find my voice, and whatever that is, I feel like it's starting to get a little more focused. Someone reminded me the other day ago that this album is my 12th album, and which is crazy. But that being said, there's a lot of my albums that really probably never should have seen the light of day that were actually not very good, and I've since discontinued a few of those because it's kind of embarrassing. But that's a good thing, because I've grown as a player, as an artist, as a person, hopefully. And so I'm able to recognize things that I didn't recognize when I was in the moment. And I'm sure it's probably going to be the same case here. You know, it already is. I'm actually already hearing things. It's like, man, why did I do that? I should have done that different. You know, even sitting here just sweating over this, there were still those moments. But, you know, it is what it is. But all that to say, everybody be fearless. That's the vibe of that song. Just do your thing. And that's what I'm doing. So throw darts. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing my thing. So the next tune, real quick, let me play it. Bohemia After Dark by the great jazz bassist Oscar Pettiford. This is my interpretation of his song. I'll play about the first minute. So you get the idea of that. So Oscar Pettiford, Sam Jones, Jimmy Blanton, Ray Brown. There's so many great bassists that I love. Paul Chambers is probably one of my all-time favorite bass players, but I always loved this song. And it's funny because I don't know that many versions of it, which again, I guess maybe is why I was attracted to it. But if you hear the original version, it's on upright bass, and the version I have is almost like a mini big band. It's a full horn section, and it's beautiful, you know. And so I was like, I always dug this tune. So there you have it. I just wanted to kind of do it, but initially I wanted to go for kind of like a Marcus Miller kind of vibe when the melody comes in with the kind of that more funky feeling. Last point on this, that front part you heard was like super Zeppelin-y kind of thing. That's actually at the end of the song. And it was one of those, when I was doing it and mixing it, I was like, man, it sure would be nice if people could hear this before 5 minutes. So once again, I copied and pasted and moved it to the front. In hindsight, I don't know if that was such a good idea, because it's two different feels, and I really like it when it comes in to write the groove. So probably in hindsight, if I'm going to be honest, I probably would get rid of the beginning and just come right in with just right into it. But what are you going to do? You make decisions in the moment, you live with them, you make the best choices you can. It's never going to be perfect, and you're always going to be questioning yourself forever. It's okay. I've learned to accept that about myself. So that's the decision. That's where I landed the plane that day. All right, moving forward. Magnetic. We play a little bit of Magnetic. So that's a snippet of Magnetic, and this is an interesting thing for me on this tune here. Normally, I have a really bad habit when I write because I'm influenced by so much of different kinds of music that when I write, I'm coming from so many different places that sometimes my stuff could sound scattered and all over the place. That's not good. I mean, it's cool artistically and very cool creatively, which I'm okay with. But on a business sense, when you try to put that in the business world, it's very hard to make that work. And so it's a challenge. And anyway, so I know that about myself, but this song specifically, I hate to admit it, but I'm going to say this. I was actually trying to write a song for radio. And I've never done that before. And radio I'm talking about is easy listening, smooth jazz, contemporary jazz. And this song specifically was kind of written in that vein. And I was going there with this song. And so I did things to the arrangement to kind of give it that feel. That said, I don't know if I'll ever see the light of day on those stations. And that's okay again, too. But I would just encourage you to, I don't know if that's such a great way to write. I like the way the song turned out. I like the final result. But I don't know if that's a healthy way to write. And that's probably why I've never done that before. Because I always just write on the creative thing and just improvise into something, and fall into an idea to write for radio. I know there's the national songwriters, and it's an art form and it's a skill, and maybe you write like that, maybe people write like that, and that's cool. But for me personally, I think I probably shouldn't take that approach. But all that said, that was kind of the approach on that song. Okay, now for something radically different. This one's a little embarrassing, but what is it among friends, right? This is called Happy Girl. Just wait for it. Oh, happy girl, won't you dance with me? Quickly get the tea, oh honey, be on the scene. Oh, happy girl, don't you walk away. Today is not the day, yesterday is the ending of the day. That's fine. That's fine. So there you have that. Tomatoes, anyone? No. Look, so I really like Daft Punk, and I really like Owl City, if you're familiar with Owl City. So I don't know, I came up with that groove, and I actually had that progression for a long time, and I just really liked it. When you play it on solo bass, it actually sounds like something the Flea would do, maybe. And just in this basic form, that's nowhere close to Flea. But I'm just saying, in a basic chord form, it just kind of feels like that. But it turned it more into a more fun thing here. And I struggled and could never come up with a melody for it. I tried doing all kinds of stuff. Maybe it's because of the tempo, or I don't know. There's a million reasons. I'm just not hearing anything for some reason, which happens as a writer, as a composer. Sometimes things just don't. You just can't get there, and then sometimes it's crazy. So I struggled with that, and I was like, what if I did a Daft Punk thing? Now, you who are watching, who know me well, know that I really can't sing. I really can't. I'm terrible. I'm not a singer. I wish I was, because I've lost some gigs playing bass, singing backup because of that. So all that really, I had fun with it. I came up with the lyrics, but that one was a little studio trickery. using a vocoder, and I admitted I auto-tuned it to death. So it's okay because I knew I had the tracks, and I'm just going to do this thing on top, and it kind of is what it is. But I like the lyrics, and getting back to the concept of Nevada Sun. If you listen to the lyrics on that, it kind of ties in some of my personal experiences since I've been here, and I've had a really great time, and probably too much of a good time in the last couple of years. Okay, so that brings me to, I got 2 songs left. All right, let me play this. I'm gonna probably play this in its entirety. It's just 2 minutes long. It's called the 2-Minute Takedown. Wait for it. This is just a vibe. It's kind of riding away. Here it comes. I love that transition right there. This. Down, 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 stay, oh, oh, oh. Stay, down, down, So, 2-Minute Takedown. Here's what's that was actually the last song I did. There's a couple things about that. There's a couple things about this. The 2-Minute Takedown. Once again, I came up with that groove, and I was like, wow, I like the groove. I like where it's kind of going. It's just kind of hanging out in space on one chord. Let me come up with something. I struggled, and I couldn't come up with a melody. And I was like, 2 years into it, I'm down to this last song. I could have just said, screw it, I don't need this song, because I actually had enough material for a full album. But back in the day, Colonel Bruce Hampton nicknamed me 11. That's my nickname, 11. So for this Nevada Sun and this whole spiritual journey I've been on, I wanted 11 songs. So I was like, man, I got to have this tune on here. I don't know how or what. So I was like, you know what? I've done enough bass. I'm playing like 5 bass tracks on every song, playing the chords, slapping, and all this stuff. Is like, why don't I just lay out on this tune? And I don't want to solo. I'm tired. I'm tired of this. Let's just finish this up, wrap it up, and let's just put a groove on it. So I was going for, if you're familiar with Thievery Corporation, cool stuff, man. And so that's kind of the whole spirit of where I was going with this, and trying to capture some of that Skrillex-y kind of thing to kind of tie in the Nevada-ness of the Vegas stuff. You know, it's not necessarily a Vegas type song, obviously, but I just really am drawn to that electronic kind of stuff that you're hearing in that. So I spent a little bit of time kind of manipulating some of that. There you go, the 2-Minute Takedown. Which brings me to my very last song. Wow. It's been a fun time. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. We've been here almost an hour, and I really appreciate it. I'm just, again, so excited, so thankful for all of you tuning into this. And let me finish the last song before I go down that rabbit hole. So the last song is called Spiritual. And it's a cover song. It's my arrangement of the great bassist Charlie Hayden and Pat Metheny. And they did a version of that on one of their albums called Beyond Missouri Sky. And it's a beautiful song. Charlie wrote it. I guess they kind of collaborated on that, but Charlie wrote it, and he actually, his son wrote lyrics to it. I kept it instrumental, but let me just play it for you, and you'll get the sense of where this one's at. So there's a little bit of spiritual. A couple of things on this. Again, Charlie Hayden, great song. But you know, it's amazing. It's really like a nursery rhyme. It's like the melody's really simple, but yet so beautiful. And the changes are basically, you know, it's again, it's simple harmonically. In terms of there's not a lot of changing from where it establishes itself. But here's the thing, the only drag to me on this, so I'm bowing the upright as well as tapping and doing all the parts you're hearing, the drums, all that stuff. Well, I hate to, don't want to sound like a broken record, but everything you hear on this album, everything that you've heard, every single note has been me on every instrument. I mixed it myself. And I think I mentioned Rich Breen earlier. It mastered it, thankfully. He helped salvage some of my shortcomings. But the hardest thing about this is when I was recording the upright bass, I was having to run in the other room. I was having to pre-roll 20 bars, run into the other room, put on my headphones, kind of get in that mind space, and then try to play, and then run back here and see how it sounded. So it's almost impossible when you try to record yourself. It's one thing to go with DI and record, but to try to do upright bass, especially bowed, is very difficult because there's so many variables on the tone. You know, obviously having a really good mic is important. I have really great mics, so I used what I had on as far as a mic. But so that's, I guess my point is, the only downside for me is I really like the performance that I gave on the bowed part. I just don't like the tone so much. It's passable, but it could be way better, and I know that. But you know what? It's one of those things where it's kind of like Bob Dylan or Johnny Cash or something. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if the emotion and the heart is there, and I felt like the performance-wise, I hope it was. It is for me anyway. I'm happy with it. I'm okay with it. But I know as a recording quality, that could be improved upon, but that's okay. That's what happens when you try to do everything yourself. You know, things are going to fall a little bit around the cracks. Well, anywho, this has been just really something. This has been something, all right. But it has been very exciting to finally share my music with all of you who happen to watch this or watch the rebroadcast. Again, can't thank you enough for your time. Now, if you would like to get this album 2 hours before anyone else can get it, with a coupon code for, you can get this whole CD, 11 songs with, and the digital booklet. And I also have a lot of thank yous in the digital booklet as well, and the great pictures by Regina and the artwork by Thomas that I mentioned. Anyway, it's $4.99. If you'd like a copy, go to my website and click on store. And when you go to the store, you're going to see it. We just opened it up. It's just now available on my store. And when you go to do the coupon code right below the image, you can type in Nevada Sun. But be mindful that at 12 o'clock, it's gone and it won't come back. And hopefully, if you don't get it now, you can check it out later. I would really appreciate it. It would mean so much to me. I put so much into this project. I guess just in closing here before I just say goodbye, I think, you know, as an artist, you grow a lot. And I feel like I've grown a lot in 2 years just because I've had to, starting all over again, and my spiritual journey. And that's, to backtrack a little bit, spiritual, why I had that song. I felt like it was a nice closing song of where I was at, just, you know, the whole concept of the album that I was going for. So I failed to mention that's why that one was last. But so I felt like I've been on the spiritual journey, you know, being here 2 years, being in the desert, and not going to get on the faith bandwagon, but, you know, it was often mentioned in the Bible, and I'm sure other places, that God often, Jesus, who, you know, would go into the desert or into the wilderness and be alone. And I've certainly had many wilderness nights out here in Vegas. And so it's kind of a full circle for me. And you know, I don't know really where I'm going with that point, but that song right there just kind of put a final cap on the thing for me. So at any rate, man, I'm so thankful for you guys watching this, and I hope to do more of these in the future. But next time I'm actually going to play live. Man, I'll do a concert. We'll work it out. But thank you so much. Check out my album if you can. And I do want to acknowledge my nephew behind the camera back here, Mr. Matthew Messer. Matthew's another one. He moved here too, and has started a whole life for himself. At what, 23 now? 23. This kid's 23. Man, dang. All right. So I'm very proud of him and thankful for his work. And thank you so much. Until next time. Bye-bye.